I was elbow deep in a batch of fresh ricotta when my phone buzzed on the counter. It was my mother. I let it ring. She called again and again. On the fourth call, I wiped my hands on my apron and picked up. "Sophia, your father and I need to talk to you about the restaurant." That sentence had never once led to anything good. I looked around my kitchen at Rosemary and Vine, the Italian restaurant I had built from nothing in the heart of Lincoln Park, Chicago. Every tile on the backsplash I had picked out myself from a salvage yard in Pilsen. The copper pots hanging above the prep station were ones I had collected over a decade, some from estate sales, some gifted by mentors, one from a tiny shop in Bologna during the only vacation I had ever taken. The pasta machine bolted to the counter was a refurbished 1970s Imperia that I had rebuilt with my own hands. This place was not just a business. It was my entire life compressed into 1,600 square feet. "What about the restaurant, Mom?" "Not over the phone. Sunday dinner. Your brother will be there too." My brother, Marcus. 36 years old, fresh off being let go from his consulting firm after his team lost 3 major accounts in a row. The golden child who could do no wrong even when he did everything wrong. I already knew where this was heading. "I'll be there," I said, and hung up before she could hear the tremor in my voice. I want to back up a little, because you need to understand what Rosemary and Vine meant to me, and what it took to build it. I never went to culinary school. I learned to cook standing on a step stool in my grandmother's kitchen on the south side, watching her make ragout that simmered for 6 hours and pasta dough she rolled out by hand every single morning until her arthritis made it impossible. When she passed, she left me her recipe journal, a leather-bound notebook filled with handwriting so beautiful it looked like calligraphy, and a note tucked inside the front cover that said, "Feed people with love, Sophia. Everything else will follow." I worked in restaurants from the time I was 16. Dishwasher, prep cook, line cook, sous chef. I spent 3 years at a Michelin-starred place downtown where the head chef screamed at me daily but taught me more about flavor than any classroom ever could. I saved every penny. I lived in a studio apartment with a hot plate and a mini fridge for 4 years. And when I was 28, I signed a lease on a gutted storefront that used to be a dry cleaner, and I turned it into Rosemary and Vine. The first year nearly killed me. I was the chef, the dishwasher, the hostess, and the accountant. I made pasta by hand every morning starting at 4 a.m. I developed relationships with local farms for my produce and a small ranch downstate for my meat. I created a menu that changed with the seasons because that is how my grandmother cooked, with whatever was freshest and best. Slowly, people started coming. Then they started coming back. Then they started telling their friends. By year 3, we had a 2-week waiting list for Friday and Saturday nights. Chicago Magazine named us one of the 10 best new restaurants in the city. A food writer from the Tribune called my cacio e pepe the best version of the dish outside of Rome. I hired a small team of people I trusted, including my sous chef, Danny, who had been with me since month 4 and could finish my sentences in the kitchen, and Elena, my front-of-house manager who remembered every regular's name, their anniversary, their kids' food allergy, everything. I was proud. Not in a loud way. In a quiet way. The way you are proud when you build something real with your hands and your sweat and your grandmother's recipes and absolutely nothing was handed to you. My parents did help with the initial financing. My father co-signed the bank loan because at 28 with no degree and no collateral, my signature alone was not enough. I was grateful for that. I told him so every time I made a loan payment, which I never missed, not once in 5 years. But there were strings. There are always strings with my father. Sunday dinner was exactly what I expected. My mother made her usual pot roast, which she somehow managed to overcook every single time despite doing it for 30 years. Marcus was already there when I arrived, sitting at the dining table with his laptop open, wearing a blazer over a t-shirt like he was about to pitch a venture capital firm. My father got right to it. He had never been one for small talk. "Marcus has a proposal for the restaurant," he said, cutting his meat without looking at me. "My restaurant," I corrected. "The restaurant I co-signed for," he replied. And there it was. Marcus launched into his pitch like I was a client. He had slides. Actual slides. He talked about scalability and brand optimization and streamlining the supply chain. He talked about replacing my handmade pasta with a high-quality commercial alternative to reduce labor costs. He talked about expanding the menu to include crowd pleasers like burgers and wings to capture a broader demographic. He talked about franchising within 3 years, burgers and wings, at my Italian restaurant, where I made fresh pappardelle every morning. Marcus just needs an opportunity to get back on his feet, my mother said, using the same gentle voice she used when she asked me to share my toys with him when we were children. Except back then, the toy was a stuffed rabbit, and now it was my entire livelihood. He has an MBA from Northwestern, my father added, as if that settled everything. As if a piece of paper from a business school outweighed 5 years of me pouring my soul into every plate that left my kitchen. I've been profitable every single quarter, I said. The loan is ahead of schedule. We have a wait list. What exactly is the problem? The problem, Marcus said, leaning forward with that smile he always used when he was about to say something condescending, is that you're thinking small, Soph. You've got a cute little neighborhood spot. I'm talking about building an empire. Cute little neighborhood spot. I looked at my mother. She looked away. I looked at my father. He met my eyes. I'm exercising my rights under the loan agreement, he said. Marcus is coming on as managing director. You'll stay on as head chef. It's a good deal, Sophia. You get to do what you love and let someone who understands business handle the rest. Someone who understands business. My brother, who had been fired from 2 jobs in 4 years. Who leased a BMW he could not afford, who once tried to day trade his way out of credit card debt and lost $12,000 in a week. I sat there for a long moment. The pot roast was getting cold. My mother was fidgeting with her napkin. Marcus was already scrolling through his phone, the deal done in his mind. Here is what they did not know. Growing up with Marcus taught me one thing. When he wanted something, he took it, used it up, and moved on to the next thing, leaving someone else to clean up the wreckage. He did it with every gift, every opportunity, every relationship, and my parents let him, every single time. So when my father first mentioned Marcus helping out at the restaurant 6 months earlier, a casual comment over Thanksgiving turkey, I started preparing. I photographed every recipe, every supplier contact, every equipment manual. I documented every process, every customer preference. Elena had memorized, every technique Danny had mastered. I made copies of every contract, every vendor agreement, every financial record. I built a complete blueprint of how Rosemary and Vine operated. Down to the exact temperature, I kept the walk-in cooler and the specific farm where I sourced my San Marzano-style tomatoes. I also quietly talked to Margaret Chen, who owned a successful restaurant group in Wicker Park. She had been through something similar with her ex-business partner years ago. Protect your recipes, protect your relationships, and protect your patience, she told me. When they come crawling back, and they will, you need to be ready to dictate terms, not beg for scraps. I was ready. I stood up from the dinner table, folded my napkin, and set it beside my plate. Fine, I said. He can have it. My mother looked relieved. My father looked surprised it had been that easy. Marcus did not look up from his phone. I drove home that night with the windows down despite the February cold. I did not cry. I had already done my crying months ago, alone in my apartment, grieving the possibility of this exact moment. Now that it was real, I was calm. Almost eerily calm. Because I knew something they did not. I knew exactly how this was going to end. Marcus moved fast. Within the first week, he fired Danny, my sous chef, who had been with me for nearly 5 years, who knew every recipe by heart, who could run the kitchen blindfolded. Too expensive, Marcus said. I can hire 2 culinary school grads for what we're paying him. Danny called me that night. He was not angry. He was heartbroken. He told me the restaurant was going in a new direction. He said, Soph, he doesn't even know how to turn on the oven. I know, I said. Keep your phone on. This isn't over. Next, Marcus replaced our local farm suppliers with a bulk food distributor. The heirloom tomatoes from the family farm in Indiana, gone. The hand-pulled mozzarella from the Italian deli on Taylor Street, gone. The dry-aged beef from the ranch downstate, gone. All replaced with whatever was cheapest in the Cisco catalog. He gutted the interior. My reclaimed wood tables, the ones I had sanded and finished myself, replaced with sleek, modern furniture that looked like it belonged in a hotel lobby. The warm lighting I had carefully chosen to make the dining room feel like my grandmother's kitchen, swapped for harsh overhead LEDs. He took down the framed photos of Nana, and replaced them with abstract art he bought in bulk from some online retailer. He added burgers to the menu, and wings, and a build-your-own pasta bowl station using pre-cooked noodles from a bag. I followed all of this through Elena, who stayed on because she needed the paycheck, but texted me updates almost daily. Each message was another piece of evidence I filed away carefully, methodically, the way my grandmother used to organize her spice cabinet. Everything in its place, everything ready to be used when the time came. He changed the name of the cacio e pepe, Elena texted one day. It's now called classic cheese pasta. I'm not making that up. Classic cheese pasta. I almost laughed. Almost. The first month, revenue held steady because of our existing reputation. Regulars came in expecting rosemary and vine and got whatever Marcus had turned it into. Most of them did not come back. By month 2, the online reviews started turning. What happened to this place? Wrote one longtime customer on Yelp. The pasta tastes like it came out of a microwave. The charm is completely gone. Another wrote, used to be our favorite date night spot. Now it feels like an Applebee's with pretensions. Marcus's response was to spend $8,000 on a social media marketing campaign featuring influencers who had never eaten at the original restaurant and could not pronounce bruschetta correctly. Month 3. My mother called me. The numbers are slipping, she said carefully. Marcus says it's seasonal, but your father is worried. Could you maybe come in a few days a week, just to help with the food? No, I said. Sophia, please. You know your brother is trying his best. His best destroyed what I spent 5 years building. No. I hung up and went back to my work, because I had not been sitting idle. The week after I left Rosemary and Vine, I walked into Margaret Chen's restaurant and asked for a job. Not as head chef, as a line cook. I wanted to learn how she ran her operation, her systems, her vendor relationships, her approach to scaling without sacrificing quality. She understood immediately. You're building your comeback, she said. I'm building my arsenal, I replied. For 3 months, I worked Margaret's line from 5 a.m. to 2 p.m., then spent my afternoons updating my business plan, refining my recipes, strengthening relationships with the suppliers Marcus had dropped. Every single one of them remembered me. Every single one of them said the same thing. When you're ready, we're here. Month 4. The health department cited Rosemary and Vine for improper food storage. Marcus had let the walk-in cooler temperature slip because he wanted to reduce the electricity bill. Elena told me 2 customers had complained about stomach issues after eating there. The local food blog that had once called us Lincoln Park's best-kept secret published a piece titled The Fall of Rosemary and Vine. What went wrong? Month 5. 3 of the remaining kitchen staff quit on the same day. Marcus had cut their hours while expecting the same output. He tried to replace them with temp workers from a staffing agency. Elena texted me a photo of a cook, Googling how to make Alfredo sauce on his phone during service. I saved the photo. Also, in month 5, suppliers started calling me directly. Your brother owes us $14,000, said Frank from the meat distributor. He keeps promising payment next week. It's been 6 next weeks. I documented every call, every number, every broken promise. Month 6. Elena called me, not texted. Her voice was shaking. He's talking about closing. Sophia. He told the staff today that if things don't turn around by the end of the month, he's shutting down. Then he left early to go to some networking event. Of course he did. Marcus never stayed to watch things burn. He just lit the match and walked away. 2 days later, my father appeared at my apartment. He looked 10 years older than he had at that Sunday dinner 6 months ago. He sat on my couch and stared at his hands for a full minute before speaking. We made a terrible mistake, he said. I said nothing. The restaurant is 90 days behind on rent. The bank is threatening to call the full loan. There are liens from 3 different suppliers. The health department is talking about shutting us down. And Marcus? He trailed off. And Marcus? I prompted. He says the location was wrong. The market shifted. The concept needed more time. My father's voice cracked. He wants to walk away. He's talking about getting into real estate flipping now. I almost smiled. Almost. Instead, I walked to my desk, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a thick binder. 6 months of documentation. Photographs of every change Marcus made. Screenshots of every negative review. Records of every supplier complaint. financial projections showing the trajectory of decline from the moment he took over, a detailed analysis of exactly how much damage he had caused, down to the dollar. I set the binder on the coffee table between us. "This is how it's going to work," I said, "and I need you to listen very carefully, because I'm only going to say this once." My father looked at the binder, then at me. I could see something shift in his eyes. Maybe it was respect. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the realization that the daughter he had always underestimated had been 3 steps ahead of him from the very beginning. "First, you and Mom are going to transfer full ownership of the restaurant to me. Not co-signed, not shared. Mine. My name only. No conditions, no fine print, no strings." He started to speak. I held up my hand. "Second, you are going to personally call every employee that Marcus fired and offer them their positions back at their original pay, plus compensation for the months they were out of work. Danny, the prep cooks, the dishwasher Marcus replaced with a machine that broke after 2 weeks. Every single one. Sophia, we can't afford. Third, you and Marcus are going to write a letter to every supplier he stiffed, taking full responsibility for the unpaid debts. I will negotiate payment plans with them, but the apology comes from you. That's. And fourth." I paused here because this was the one that mattered most to me. "You are going to take out a notice in the Tribune food section. A public statement acknowledging that removing me from my own restaurant was a mistake, and that I am returning as sole owner and operator." My father sat in silence for a long time. Outside, the L train rattled past. A siren wailed somewhere on Fullerton. "You planned this," he said finally. "From the beginning. From the moment you mentioned Marcus's name at Thanksgiving," I said. "You taught me something growing up, Dad. You taught me that in this family, the person who has a plan wins. You just never expected that person to be me." He signed the papers 4 days later. My mother cried when she put her signature next to his, though I was not entirely sure what the tears were for. Marcus did not show up to the signing. He was in Arizona, apparently, looking at investment properties. He sent a text that said, "Good luck with the pasta thing." The pasta thing. Right. The first thing I did when I got the keys back was stand in the kitchen alone. It was a mess. Grease on surfaces, Marcus's temp workers never properly cleaned. Equipment I did not recognize shoved into corners. A stack of frozen burger patties sitting in the walk-in next to what appeared to be a case of pre-made pasta sauce in plastic pouches. I threw the burgers away first. Then the pouches. Then I called Danny. "How fast can you get here?" I asked. "I'm already in my car," he said. Elena told me. Within a week, my whole team was back. Danny in the kitchen. Elena up front. The prep cooks. The line cooks. Even Miguel, our dishwasher, who had been working at a car wash since Marcus fired him. Every single one of them walked through the door, tied on their aprons, and got to work like they had never left. We stripped out Marcus's renovations in 3 days. The modern furniture went to a thrift store. The LED panels came down. I called my friend who was a carpenter, and she helped me restore the reclaimed wood tables that Marcus had shoved into a storage unit. I rehung my grandmother's photos. I brought back the warm lighting. I called every supplier personally. Frank at the meat distributor, Sarah at the tomato farm in Indiana, old Mr. Bernardi at the Italian deli. I explained what happened. I presented payment plans, and I asked for their trust one more time. Every single one said yes. We spent 2 weeks retraining, retesting recipes, rebuilding. I worked 18-hour days. Danny matched me hour for hour. Elena rebuilt our reservation system from scratch and personally called every regular in our database to let them know we were coming back. When we reopened, there was a line around the block, not because of marketing or influencers or social media campaigns, because the people who had loved Rosemary and Vine had been waiting. They just needed to know the real thing was back. The food blogger who had written our obituary published a new piece the next week. Rosemary and Vine returns to its roots. She wrote that the cacio e pepe was even better than she remembered. She was right. I had spent those 6 months refining every recipe, pushing every dish further, making everything sharper and more intentional. Losing the restaurant had made me a better chef. The Tribune ran the public notice my father had agreed to. It was small, buried in the food section, but people noticed. Regulars mentioned it. Other restaurant owners mentioned it. It became part of our story, the story of a restaurant that survived its own family. My mother came in on a Tuesday evening, 2 months after we reopened. She stood by the host stand, looking around at the restored dining room, listening to the hum of conversation and clinking glasses and the sound of fresh pasta being plated in the kitchen. "It's beautiful," she said. "It's exactly how it was." "No," I said, plating a dish of hand-rolled pappardelle with braised short rib ragu. "It's better." She sat at the bar and watched me work for an hour. When she finally spoke again, her voice was quiet. "I'm sorry, Sophia. We should have seen what you built here. We should have trusted you." I set down my tongs and looked at her. "You should have. But you chose Marcus because he had the right degree and the right vocabulary. You confused confidence with competence, and it almost cost me everything." She nodded. She did not argue. That might have been the first time in my life she did not try to defend him. "How is Marcus?" I asked, not because I cared, but because I was curious. "He's in Scottsdale. The real estate thing did not work out. Now he's talking about starting a consulting firm." She paused. "For restaurants." I laughed. A real, full laugh, the kind I had not let myself have in months. Danny looked over from the pass and grinned. He had heard the whole thing. "Of course he is," I said, and I went back to my kitchen. A year later, Rosemary and Vine was not just back. It was thriving in ways I had not imagined. The loan was almost paid off, ahead of schedule for the second time. We had been featured in Bon Appetit, not for a comeback story, but for the food itself, which was the recognition that mattered most to me. I opened a small cooking school in the space next door. Weekend classes where I taught people to make fresh pasta the way my grandmother taught me. By feel, by smell, by the way the dough springs back when you press it with your thumb. Danny was promoted to executive chef. Elena was made a partner in the cooking school. Miguel, our dishwasher, who Marcus had fired to save $40 a shift, was now training as a prep cook and had enrolled in community college culinary classes. I paid his tuition. It was the best investment I ever made. I kept one thing from Marcus's renovation: a framed photo someone had taken of the restaurant during his tenure. The LED lights, the generic furniture, the menu board advertising build your own pasta bowl, $12.99. I hung it in my office, right next to my grandmother's framed recipe for Sunday ragu. It was a reminder, not of what Marcus did to my restaurant, but of what I was capable of when the people who were supposed to believe in me did not. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover exactly how hard you will fight to get it back. Last month, a young woman came in to interview for a line cook position. She was 23, fresh out of culinary school, and so nervous her hands were shaking when she shook mine. "My family thinks I'm making a mistake," she said, staring at her lap. "My dad keeps telling me to go back to school and get a business degree. He says cooking isn't a real career." I thought about my father sitting on my couch, holding papers that signed away his control over my dream. I thought about my grandmother's recipe journal, still sitting in my office drawer, the leather worn soft from my hands. I thought about every 4 a.m. morning, every calloused finger, every plate of pasta I made with love when no one was watching. I leaned forward and smiled. "Let me tell you a story," I said, "about a chef whose family gave her restaurant to her brother because he had a business degree, and how she got it all back, and then some." Her eyes widened. She leaned in. I started from the beginning. Thanks for watching. See you next time, and stay amazed.